I pulled into the driveway of my house in suburban Virginia after 18 months deployed in Okinawa, exhausted but excited to finally sleep in my own bed. What I saw made my blood run cold. My father Frank and my brother Tyler stood on my porch with their arms crossed, smirking like they'd just won the lottery. "Surprise!" Frank called out. "We sold your house to pay off Tyler's gambling debts. You're homeless now." They both laughed. I stayed calm, smiled, and said, "That's interesting." Tyler's smirk faltered. "What's so funny?" he snapped. I kept smiling. "The house you sold was actually—" I paused, watching their faces drain of color as realization began to dawn. Let me back up and explain how I even got to this moment. My name is Hilda, and I'm 28 years old. I bought this house 3 years ago with my VA loan before my second deployment overseas. I was 25 then, proud and finally independent after years of working my tail off to get where I was. I'd worked 2 jobs to save that down payment while serving in the Marine Corps, waitressing at a diner on weekends and picking up EMT shifts whenever I could. Every penny went into that house fund because I wanted something that was mine, something stable, something nobody could take away from me. My mother passed away from breast cancer when I was 19. She was the backbone of our family, the one who actually raised Tyler and me while my father Frank mostly drank beer and watched sports on television. After she died, everything fell apart. Frank became bitter and distant. Tyler, who's 2 years older than me, spiraled. Had always been the golden child in my father's eyes, even though he never held a job longer than 6 months and had a gambling problem that started in high school. I joined the Marines at 18 because I needed structure, purpose, and honestly, distance from the chaos at home. The military gave me everything my family couldn't. Discipline, respect, a sense of belonging. I worked hard, got promoted to staff sergeant, and earned every single rank on my collar. When I bought the house, it felt like the culmination of everything I'd worked for. A cute 3-bedroom ranch with a big backyard in a quiet neighborhood. I loved that place. I painted the walls myself, planted flowers in the garden, fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom. It was mine. Before deploying to Okinawa for 18 months, I made what I now realize was a catastrophic mistake. I gave my father power of attorney to handle any emergencies with the house while I was gone. He was my dad. Despite our complicated history, despite his favoritism toward Tyler, I trusted him. He promised to take care of things. He had a key and access to all my financial documents, just in case something went wrong with the mortgage or the roof needed repairs or whatever might come up. Tyler had been living rent-free in Frank's apartment for years, racking up gambling debts at underground poker games in Richmond. I heard rumors before I left, but thought maybe the distance would do everyone some good. I kept my house meticulously maintained, even paying my neighbor Mrs. Chen $300 to mow the lawn and check on things monthly while I was deployed. I stayed in touch with Frank through emails and occasional video calls. He always said everything was fine. The house was fine. Don't worry about anything. Focus on your service. I believed him. So there I was, standing in front of my house after 18 long months overseas, staring at my father and brother, trying to process what they'd just told me. "You sold my house," I said slowly, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Frank nodded, that same smug expression plastered on his face. Had to. Tyler was in real trouble. Owed some dangerous people a lot of money. They were gonna break his legs, Hilda. What was I supposed to do? Not sell my house, I said. Tyler laughed, a harsh sound that made my skin crawl. "Come on, sis. You were halfway around the world. You'd never even know until you got back. And honestly, you're making good money in the Marines. You'll be fine. I needed help. Family comes first, right?" I felt my hands shake with rage, but I forced myself to keep smiling. "Show me the paperwork." Frank looked surprised but pulled a folder from his jacket. "Sure, it's all legal. I had power of attorney, remember? Sold it 6 months ago for $230,000. Got a great price, actually." He handed me the documents, confident head covered all his bases. I flipped through them slowly. The forged deed with my signature, which I absolutely did not sign. The sale contract, Bank transfer confirmations showing the money had already been distributed. All of it looked official. Who bought it? I asked. Nice young couple, Frank said. Nathan and Carolyn Wells. Through a real estate agent named Dennis Crawford. They paid asking price, cash deal, closed in 2 weeks, real smooth transaction. I looked at the financial breakdown. $80,000 to loan sharks to clear Tyler's debts. $60,000 for Tyler's new truck. $30,000 for Frank's so-called expenses and stress. $60,000 into a joint account for Tyler's fresh start. My entire life, sold off in pieces to fund their mistakes. What about my stuff? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. My furniture? My photo albums? Mom's jewelry that I kept in the house. Frank shrugged. Sold it or tossed it. Buyers wanted the place empty and move-in ready. That's how these things work. I nodded slowly, still smiling. And you're sure this was all legal? You had the authority to do this. Absolutely, Frank said, his chest puffing out. Power of attorney, baby. You signed it yourself before you left. Tyler crossed his arms, grinning. What are you gonna do about it, sis? Dad had legal authority. The house is gone. The money's spent. You got nothing. That's when I decided to drop the first bomb. That's interesting, I said calmly, because I'm curious about something. Did you happen to check if there were any tenants living in the house when you sold it? Frank's expression flickered with confusion. What tenants? The house was empty. Really? I pulled out my phone and opened a folder of saved documents. Because I rented out 3 of the 4 bedrooms to Marine Corps friends before I deployed. Sergeant Maria Torres, Corporal Jake Anderson, and Staff Sergeant Deshaun Wright. They each paid me $800 a month. That's $2,400 in rental income that covered my mortgage and then some. They all had 1-year leases, notarized and filed with the county. Those leases don't expire for another 4 months. Frank's face went white. Tyler's grin disappeared. Oh, and about those tenants. I continued, my smile growing wider. You kicked them out 2 months ago when you prepped the house for sale, right? That was an illegal eviction. They each paid $3,000 security deposits that you never returned. They've already filed complaints with the Virginia Housing Authority. That's not, Frank stammered. And here's the really interesting part, I said, pulling up another document on my phone. That power of attorney you keep bragging about? Let me read you the exact language. Property management and emergency repairs only. The attorney, in fact, shall have no authority to sell, transfer, or encumber any real property owned by the principal without express written consent. I had a military legal assistance attorney draft it specifically that way before I left. You never had the authority to sell my house, Dad. Not even close. The color drained completely from Frank's face. Tyler started backing toward his truck. The sale is void, I said simply. You committed fraud. And that signature on the deed transfer? That's forgery. I was in Okinawa when that document was supposedly signed and notarized. I have military travel records proving it. Frank's phone rang. He looked at the screen, and his hands started shaking. He answered, listened for a moment, then hung up without saying a word. Who was that? Tyler asked nervously. Detective Raymond Costa, Frank said quietly. Fairfax County Police. He wants us at the station tomorrow morning for questioning. I watched my father's smug confidence shatter into a million pieces. Tyler looked like he might pass out. You called the cops on us, Frank shouted. Your own family. You stole my house, I said, my voice cold and steady. What did you think would happen? Over the next hour, sitting on the porch of the house that was legally still mine, I watched my father and brother squirm as the reality of their situation sank in. I'd already filed a police report from Okinawa 2 weeks ago when Mrs. Chen finally got through to me on a video call and told me strange people were living in my house. I'd spent every spare moment since then working with my attorney to build a case. Frank tried to negotiate, his voice taking on a pleading tone I'd never heard before. Hilda, come on. Let's work something out. You don't want to send your own father to prison, do you? You didn't seem too concerned about ruining my life, I replied. I raised you after your mother died, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. Mom raised me, I corrected. You drank beer and watched television while she worked 2 jobs and fought cancer at the same time. Don't rewrite history now that you need something from me. Tyler sat on the porch steps with his head in his hands. This is insane. It was just a house. You can buy another one. Just a house. I felt my carefully controlled anger spike. I worked 2 jobs for 3 years to save that down payment. I deployed twice to pay that mortgage. Every piece of furniture, every paint color, every planted flower was mine, and you gambled it all away like it meant nothing. I pulled out the full financial breakdown that my attorney Patricia Hughes had prepared. Let's talk about where the money actually went, shall we? $80,000 to loan sharks. That part I understand. Even if I don't agree with it. But $60,000 for your truck, Tyler? Let me guess. You leased it, didn't you? Tyler's silence was confirmation. So you don't even own the truck, I continued. You spent $60,000 of my money on a down payment and first year's lease on a vehicle you'll never own. What about the other $60,000? The Fresh Start Fund. More silence. Gone, Frank finally admitted. He went to Vegas 6 weeks after we put it in the account. Lost it all in a weekend. I turned to my father. And your $30,000 in expenses and stress? Where did that go? Frank couldn't meet my eyes. I took Linda to the Bahamas. Linda, I repeated. Your girlfriend that I've never met. You stole $30,000 from your daughter to take your girlfriend on vacation. It wasn't like that, he protested weakly. Then what was it like? I demanded. Explain it to me. Make it make sense. He couldn't. Neither of them could. They'd stolen my home, my security, my future, and blown the money on trucks, vacations, and gambling in less than 6 months. And they'd thought I'd just come home and accept it. That's when the real estate agent, Dennis Crawford, pulled up in his luxury sedan. He was a man in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit and a nervous expression. Behind him, another car arrived, a blue minivan with a family inside. Dennis approached cautiously. Miss Hilda? I'm Dennis Crawford. We spoke on the phone. Thank you for coming, I said. The family got out of the minivan, a man and woman in their 30s, 2 little girls holding their hands. The woman looked confused and worried. The man looked angry but was clearly trying to stay calm for his children. What's going on? The man asked. Why are we here? This is our house. My heart sank. These were the Wells family. Nathan and Carolyn Wells. The innocent buyers who'd paid good money for a house they thought was legitimately for sale. Mr. and Mrs. Wells, I said gently. I'm Hilda. This is actually my house. My father had no legal authority to sell it. I'm so sorry you've been dragged into this. Carolyn's face crumpled. What? No. We bought this house 6 months ago. We paid $230,000. We've been living here. We renovated the kitchen. The girls are in school here. Nathan put his arm around his wife. There has to be some mistake. Dennis jumped in, trying to cover himself. I handled this transaction in good faith. Frank showed me power of attorney documents. He represented himself as Hilda's father, selling on her behalf while she served overseas. Everything seemed legitimate. I turned to Dennis. Did you verify that the power of attorney included the right to sell real property? His silence was damning. Did you confirm with me, the actual owner, that I authorized the sale? More silence. Did you even question why a deployed service member would sell her primary residence without being present for the closing? Dennis' face reddened. I trusted Frank. He seemed like a good man. Patricia Hughes, my attorney, arrived at that moment. She was a sharp woman in her 40s with steel gray hair and an expression that meant business. She'd been working on my case remotely while I was still deployed and had flown in from D.C. specifically for this confrontation. Good afternoon, everyone, Patricia said, her voice crisp and professional. She looked at Frank and Tyler. I'm Patricia Hughes, representing Miss Hilda. Gentlemen, you should know that the Fairfax County Police Department has opened a criminal investigation into fraud and forgery. The notary who stamped that deed transfer, a Mr. Greg Simpson, has already been interviewed. Has admitted that he notarized Frank's signature on the deed without Hilda being present, which is a felony. Hes willing to testify to reduce his own charges. Frank's face went gray. Tyler actually vomited into the bushes. Patricia turned to the Wells family. Mr. and Mrs. Wells, I'm truly sorry you've been caught in the middle of this. Unfortunately, I have some bad news. I spoke with your title insurance company this morning. They're refusing to pay out on your policy because the sale was fraudulent from the beginning. That means you could lose both the house and your money. Carolyn started crying. Nathan looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Their little girls, maybe 6 and 8 years old, started asking their mommy why she was sad. I felt sick. This family had done nothing wrong. They'd saved for years to buy their dream home. They'd spent $25,000 renovating the kitchen, installed a swing set in the backyard, enrolled their daughters in the local elementary school. And now they were about to lose everything because of my father's greed and my brother's addiction. There has to be a solution, I said to Patricia. These people are innocent. Legally, the sale is void, Patricia said. You have the right to reclaim your property, but you're correct that the Wells family has a claim against Frank for fraud. The problem is, Frank has no assets to pay them back. Nathan looked at Frank with pure hatred. You ruined us. We trusted you. You seemed like a nice guy, selling his daughter's house to help her out while she served her country. You're a monster. Frank started to defend himself, but I cut him off. Don't. Just don't. You've said enough. Tyler, wiping his mouth, finally found his voice. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. Dad said it would be fine. He said Hilda wouldn't care. You thought I wouldn't care? I asked, my voice breaking for the first time. You thought I wouldn't care that you stole everything I worked for? What kind of person do you think I am? The kind who left. Tyler shot back. You left us. Joined the military and barely called. Barely visited. You made it pretty clear you didn't want to be part of this family. I left because this family was toxic, I said. Because Dad spent every day reminding me I wasn't as good as you. Because you've been a selfish, entitled mess since we were kids, and nobody ever held you accountable. I left to build something better, and look what you did the second you got the chance. Carolyn Wells collapsed onto the porch steps, sobbing. Her husband held her while their daughters cried. Frank sat down heavily, clutching his chest. Tyler paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair. Patricia pulled me aside. We need to talk about your options. This is going to get complicated. I know, I said, watching the devastation unfold around me. But I'm not going to let innocent people suffer for what my family did. There has to be another way. That's when Patricia told me something that changed everything. There might be. But first, you need to know about your mother's trust. Patricia and I moved away from the group, standing near my car where we could talk privately. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder of documents. When I started investigating Frank's finances for the criminal case, she began, I found something interesting. Your mother set up a trust fund before she died. It was funded by your maternal grandmother and was meant to mature when you turned 27. I stared at her. I'm 28. That was 8 months ago. While I was deployed. Exactly, Patricia said. The trust included 2 rental townhouses in Arlington. Your grandmother bought them as investment properties in the 1980s. They're now worth approximately $550,000 combined. They generate about $3,200 in monthly rental income. My head spun. I never knew about any of this. That's because Frank never told you, Patricia said grimly. I found the trust documents hidden in his home office files when we executed a search warrant yesterday. He was planning to claim them himself using another forged power of attorney. Had already contacted the trust administrator posing as your representative. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. So he wasn't just stealing my house, he was trying to steal my inheritance too. Yes. But he didn't succeed with the trust because the administrator required an in-person meeting with you to transfer the properties. Frank kept stalling, claiming you were deployed and couldn't meet. The administrator got suspicious and reached out to your commanding officer to verify. That's how I found out about it. I looked back at the scene on my porch. Frank wouldn't meet my eyes. Tyler had his head in his hands. The Wells family was devastated. Dennis Crawford was on his phone. probably calling his own lawyer. What are my options? I asked Patricia. Legally, you can void the sale and reclaim your house immediately, she said. Frank and Tyler will face criminal charges regardless. The Wells family can sue Frank for fraud, but he has no assets. They'll get a judgment but no actual money. They'll lose everything. That's not acceptable, I said. The alternative is complicated. Patricia continued. If we can find a buyer for the property who will pay enough to cover the Wells family's losses, we could facilitate a legitimate sale. Then the property would be deeded back to you. Or you could take a cash settlement. But finding that buyer quickly, someone willing to pay above market value to cover their renovation costs and moving expenses, that's nearly impossible. I thought about the 3 Marines who'd been renting rooms from me: Maria Torres, Jake Anderson, and Deshaun Wright. They'd all been illegally evicted and lost their security deposits. They wanted to help me. Not just with testimony, but with support. Jake had mentioned his father was a real estate developer. What if I told you I might know someone? I said. Patricia raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I pulled out my phone and called Jake. He answered on the second ring. Hilda, I heard you were back. How's it going with the house situation? It's a disaster, I said honestly. But I need to ask you something. Is your father still looking for investment properties in Northern Virginia? Always, Jake said. Why? I explained the situation. The Wells family. The need for a quick sale at above market value. The possibility of getting my house back in exchange for something else of value. Hold on, Jake said. Let me conference him in. A minute later, Roger Anderson was on the line. He was a gruff man with a Texas accent, but his questions were sharp and focused. How much did the Wells family pay? How much did they spend on renovations? What's the current market value? What would it take to make them whole? Give me 24 hours, Roger said finally. I'll have my people look at the property and run the numbers. If the house is as nice as you say and the neighborhood is solid, I might be able to make something work. Thank you, I said, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time since arriving home. Don't thank me yet, Roger said. I'm a businessman, not a charity, but my son speaks highly of you, and I respect people who serve. I'll see what I can do. After I hung up, Patricia looked impressed. That might actually work. But even if it does, you know Frank and Tyler are still facing serious charges. Good, I said coldly. We walked back to the group. Detective Raymond Costa had arrived, a stocky man in his 50s with graying hair and a no-nonsense attitude. He introduced himself and asked Frank and Tyler to come to the police station voluntarily for questioning. You have the right to have an attorney present, Detective Costa said. But this will go easier if you cooperate. Frank tried to bluster. This is ridiculous. I'm her father. I was just trying to help my son. By committing fraud and forgery, Detective Costa said mildly. That's an interesting defense strategy. Tyler looked like he might run. Detective Costa noticed and casually positioned himself between Tyler and his truck. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, son. I turned to Nathan and Carolyn Wells. I'm working on something. I can't promise anything, but there might be a way to make you whole. Can you give me a day or two? Nathan looked skeptical, but Carolyn nodded through her tears. We don't have much choice, do we? I'm so sorry this happened to you, I said sincerely. You didn't deserve this. Neither did you, Carolyn said softly. Your own family did this to you. That's even worse. We exchanged phone numbers, and the Wells family left in their minivan, their daughters' faces pressed against the windows as they looked back at the house they thought was theirs. Dennis Crawford slipped away after promising to cooperate fully with the investigation. Patricia headed back to her office to start preparing the mountain of paperwork this case would require. That left me alone with Frank, Tyler, and Detective Costa. I need you both to come with me, the detective said. Frank looked at me one last time. You're really doing this? Sending your father to prison. You did this to yourself, I said. Every choice that led to this moment was yours, not mine. Tyler said nothing. He just got into the detective's car, his face blank with shock. As I watched them drive away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that justice was finally being served, sadness that my family had fallen this far, and determination to rebuild what they'd tried to destroy. I turned back to my house, the house I'd bought with my own hard-earned money, and made a promise to myself. No matter what it took, no matter how long it took, I was going to make this right. The next 2 weeks were a blur of police interviews, legal meetings, and sleepless nights. I stayed at a hotel near the base, unable to bear the thought of sleeping anywhere near the house while the Wells family was still living there and the legal situation remained unresolved. Detective Costa kept me updated on the investigation. Frank had initially tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. The notary, Greg Simpson, had immediately turned on Frank to save himself, providing detailed testimony about how Frank had asked him to notarize the forged deed transfer without me present. Greg claimed Frank told him I'd already signed it but couldn't be there in person because I was deployed. Greg admitted he should have insisted on seeing me or at least video calling to verify. But Frank was an old friend, and had trusted him. That trust had been misplaced. Greg was charged with notary fraud and faced losing his license along with possible jail time. He was cooperating fully with prosecutors in exchange for probation. Tyler's story was somehow even worse than I'd initially thought. During his police interview, had broken down and confessed everything. The gambling debts weren't just from poker games. Tyler had been running a small sports betting operation through an illegal app, taking bets from coworkers at his construction job. Had gotten in over his head quickly, borrowing from loan sharks to cover losses, then gambling more to try to win it back. Classic addiction spiral. The $80,000 Frank paid to the loan sharks had cleared those debts. But Tyler immediately went back to gambling. Within 3 months, Head lost the $60,000 Fresh Start Fund in Las Vegas and racked up $40,000 in new debts to different loan sharks. He was now being threatened again, this time by people even more dangerous than the first group. Frank's portion of the money, the $30,000 in so-called expenses, had gone exactly where I'd suspected. Had taken his girlfriend Linda on a 2-week luxury cruise to the Bahamas. Linda, a woman 20 years his junior, had been dating him for only 6 months. When the criminal charges were filed, Linda disappeared, changed her number, moved out of Frank's apartment, completely ghosted him. I learned all this during a meeting with the prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Pack. She was a sharp woman in her early 40s who specialized in fraud cases. "Your father and brother are looking at serious time," Jennifer said bluntly. "Frank is facing felony fraud and forgery charges. That's 2 to 10 years in prison depending on the plea and his criminal history. Tyler is being charged as an accessory after the fact for knowingly receiving and benefiting from the proceeds of fraud. That's 1 to 5 years. What about the Wells family?" I asked. "Can anything be done to help them?" "They can sue in civil court," Jennifer said. "But collecting is another matter. Frank has no assets, Tyler has even less. A judgment won't put money in their pockets." That's when I told her about Roger Anderson's potential offer. She listened carefully, then nodded. "If Anderson can make the Wells family whole, that would be the best outcome for everyone except Frank and Tyler. But it doesn't affect the criminal charges. Those proceed regardless." "Good," I said. True to his word, Roger Anderson called me 24 hours after our first conversation. I looked at the property. Nice house, good neighborhood, solid bones. The kitchen renovation the Wells family did is quality work. "Here is my offer. My company will purchase the property from the Wells family for $270,000. That covers their original purchase price of $230,000, their $25,000 in renovation costs, and $15,000 for moving expenses and pain and suffering." I felt tears spring to my eyes. "That's incredibly generous." "I'm not done," Roger continued. "In exchange, you'll sell me those 2 inherited townhouses in Arlington for $450,000. That's $100,000 below their market value, but it's fair considering I'm solving your Wells family problem. I'll manage them as rentals, and you'll get a check for $450,000 that you can use however you want. Pay off your house, mortgage, invest, whatever. Sound fair?" I did the math quickly. The 2 townhouses were worth $550,000 combined, so I'd be taking a $100,000 loss. But it'd be saving the Wells family from financial ruin and getting my house back free and clear. My mortgage balance was only $75,000. That meant I'd walk away with $375,000 in cash. My house fully paid off, and a clear conscience. More than fair, I said. When can we start the paperwork? My lawyers will have contracts ready by tomorrow, Roger said. This should close within 30 days if everyone cooperates. I immediately called Nathan and Carolyn Wells and explained the offer. Carolyn burst into tears of relief. Nathan was silent for a long moment, then said, "Why are you doing this? You could just take the house back and leave us with nothing." "Because you're innocent," I said simply. "And because my family's mistakes shouldn't destroy your life." "Well, never forget this," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. The legal machinery started moving. Roger's lawyers drafted contracts. Patricia reviewed everything to protect my interests. The Wells family signed off on the sale. The title insurance company, relieved to avoid a lawsuit, expedited their paperwork. Meanwhile, Frank and Tyler's legal situation deteriorated rapidly. Frank tried to reach out to me through his attorney, asking if I'd consider dropping the charges in exchange for him signing over any future claims to Mom's trust properties. His attorney actually called me with this proposal. "My client is willing to cooperate fully," the attorney said. "He recognizes he made a mistake." "A mistake?" I repeated incredulously. "He committed fraud and forgery. He stole my house. He tried to steal my inheritance, and now he wants to negotiate." "Has your father," the attorney said carefully, "perhaps some compassion, tell him no." I interrupted. "The criminal charges aren't mine to drop anyway, they're the state's. And even if I could, I wouldn't. He needs to face consequences for once in his life." Frank's attorney hung up without another word. Tyler took a different approach. He wrote me a letter from county jail where he was being held without bail due to the loan shark threats making him a flight risk. The letter arrived at my hotel room 3 weeks after I'd come home. The handwriting was shaky, and there were tear stains on the paper. In it, Tyler acknowledged everything. The gambling addiction, the lies, the manipulation. He admitted that Frank had convinced him I wouldn't care because I was rich from the military. Laughable, and barely talked to them anyway. Partially true, but only because I was protecting my mental health from their toxicity. Tyler wrote about how Dad had always enabled him, always bailed him out, always made excuses. How Head never learned to take responsibility because Frank never made him. How Head watched Dad treat me like an afterthought my entire life while putting Tyler on a pedestal. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask me to drop charges or help him. He just said he was sorry and that he was finally in court, mandated gambling addiction treatment in jail. He hoped that maybe someday, years from now, he could prove Head changed. I cried reading that letter. It was the first time Tyler had ever taken real responsibility for anything. The first time Head acknowledged the damage Head caused. It didn't change what Head done, but it was something. Frank, on the other hand, remained defiant. According to Detective Costa, Frank was bitter and angry, claiming I'd destroyed the family by pressing charges. He told anyone who'd listen that he was just trying to help his son, and his ungrateful daughter had turned on him. The contrast between their responses told me everything I needed to know about who they really were. The deal with Roger Anderson closed exactly 28 days after we'd first spoken. It was remarkably smooth considering the complexity of the situation. The Wells family got their check for $270,000 and immediately put a deposit on a beautiful 4-bedroom house 3 blocks away from my original house. The new place actually had a bigger yard and a better school district. Carolyn cried when she called to tell me they'd been approved for the mortgage. "Our girls will still go to the same school," she said through happy tears. "We'll still be in the neighborhood we love. And it's all because of you. I'm just glad it worked out," I said honestly. Roger's company transferred the 2 townhouses into their corporate ownership. I signed over the deeds, and in exchange, I received a check for $450,000. I immediately paid off my house mortgage in full. $75,000 gone, leaving me with $375,000 in cash. For the first time in my life, I was completely debt-free with substantial savings, all while serving my country and doing the right thing. It felt surreal. Roger also made me another offer. Those townhouses are going to keep generating rental income. I'll manage them for a 15% fee, standard rate. But here's the thing. I'm willing to deed your original house back to you free and clear as part of this deal. You earned it. You fought for it. It should be yours. I was speechless. I don't understand. Why would you do that? Because I can afford to, Roger said simply. And because my son told me about how you saved his life in a training accident 3 years ago. He never forgot that. Neither will I. I barely remembered the incident. Jake had gotten tangled in some equipment during a field exercise. I'd been nearby and helped get him free before he could get seriously injured. It was just what any Marine would do. But apparently Jake had told his father, and Roger was the kind of man who remembered debts. I don't know what to say. I managed. Say yes, and let me feel good about doing something decent for once, Roger said with a laugh. So I did. Within another week, my house was deeded back to me, mortgage-free. I owned it outright. After everything Frank and Tyler had tried to take from me, I'd ended up in a better position than before. But the legal situation wasn't over. Frank's trial date was set for 6 weeks out. Tyler's would follow 2 weeks after that. Jennifer Pack, the prosecutor, kept me informed of plea negotiations. Frank refused to plead guilty. He was going to trial, insisting he'd only been trying to help his son and that I was being vindictive. His court-appointed attorney tried to convince him to take a plea deal of 3 years with possibility of parole after 18 months, but Frank refused. He wanted to roll the dice with a jury. Tyler, on the other hand, took the plea deal he was offered. 1 year in county jail, 5 years probation, and court-mandated gambling addiction treatment. He'd also have to pay restitution. Though the amount was nominal given his complete lack of assets, $50 a month toward the $230,000 judgment. At that rate, he'd be paying until he was 90. The plea hearing was brief. Sitting in the back of the courtroom, Tyler looked thin and pale in his orange jumpsuit. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Tyler turned and looked directly at me. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm sorry for everything. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it in person. You deserved better than what I did to you." The judge accepted his plea and sentenced him according to the agreement. Tyler was led out in handcuffs. He didn't look back. Frank's trial was a different story. He took the stand in his own defense, against his attorney's advice, and proceeded to bury himself. He ranted about how ungrateful I was, how I'd abandoned the family by joining the military, how he'd done everything for his kids and this was how I repaid him. The prosecutor, Jennifer Pack, calmly walked him through every lie, every forged document, every dollar stolen. She introduced the trust documents showing how Frank had tried to steal my inheritance as well. She called Greg Simpson, the notary, who testified that Frank had explicitly asked him to notarize a forged signature. She called the Wells family, who described buying the house in good faith only to discover they'd been defrauded. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing 2 weeks later, the judge was harsh. "Mr. Frank, you betrayed your daughter's trust in the worst possible way. She was serving our country overseas, putting her life on the line, and you stole her home. You forged documents. You attempted to steal her inheritance. And even now, you show no remorse. This court sentences you to 5 years in state prison." Frank's face went white. His attorney filed an immediate appeal, but it was denied. He was taken into custody that day. I sat in the courtroom and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, no sadness. Just emptiness. This was my father, and had chosen greed over family, had chosen Tyler's addiction over my well-being, had chosen to destroy rather than admit he was wrong. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse into bright sunshine. Patricia Hughes met me on the steps. "It's over," she said. "At least the criminal part. The civil cases will drag on, but you're protected. Your house is yours. Your inheritance is secure. Frank and Tyler will face consequences." "Thank you," I said. "For everything. You did this," Patricia said firmly. "You stood up for yourself when it would have been easier to let it go. That takes courage." I drove back to my house. The house that was finally, truly, completely mine. I walked through each room, remembering what it had looked like before, imagining what it would look like now that I could make it my own again. The Wells family had taken good care of it. The new kitchen was beautiful, all stainless steel and granite countertops. They'd left it spotlessly clean when they moved out. There was even a note on the counter. "Dear Hilda, thank you for giving us our lives back. You're an amazing person. We'll never forget what you did for us. The girls want you to come to Emma's birthday party next month. Please say yes. With love and gratitude, Nathan, Carolyn, Emma, and Sophie." I smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in weeks. Despite everything my family had tried to take from me, I'd found something better. I'd found people who valued kindness, integrity, and doing the right thing. I'd found a chosen family. That night I slept in my own bed, in my own house, debt-free and at peace. It had been a long, painful road, but I'd made it through. 6 months passed. 6 months of rebuilding my life, piece by piece. I'd separated from the Marine Corps after my deployment ended, using my GI Bill to transition into a new career. I'd always been interested in emergency management, and Fairfax County was hiring. I applied, interviewed, and got hired as an emergency management coordinator, making $68,000 a year with excellent benefits. The job was perfect for me. It used my military leadership experience, my ability to stay calm under pressure, and my organizational skills. I worked with first responders, planned for disasters, coordinated resources during emergencies. It was challenging and fulfilling in ways I'd never expected. My house became my sanctuary. I redecorated every room, putting my own stamp on it. I painted the living room a soft gray blue. I bought new furniture that I actually liked instead of whatever was cheapest. I hung photos of my mom, my Marine Corps friends, and the places I'd been during my deployments. I planted a garden in the backyard with tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. Maria Torres, one of my former tenants, asked if she could rent a room again. I agreed immediately. It was nice having a friend in the house, someone to talk to after long days at work. Maria was working toward her degree in nursing and was one of the most disciplined people I'd ever met. We fell into an easy routine of cooking dinner together a few nights a week and watching movies on weekends. Jake Anderson and Deshaun Wright visited regularly. Jake had introduced me to his father, Roger, who'd become an unlikely mentor. Roger gave me advice on investing the $375,000 I had left after paying off my mortgage. He helped me set up a diversified portfolio with a financial advisor he trusted. He taught me about real estate investing, stock markets, and building long-term wealth. "Your mom wanted you to have security," Roger told me one afternoon over coffee. "Those townhouses she left you were her way of ensuring you'd always have a safety net. Don't squander it, build on it." I took his advice seriously. I invested conservatively, focusing on long-term growth rather than risky short-term gains. I kept $100,000 in liquid savings for emergencies and invested the rest in a mix of index funds and bonds. My financial advisor projected that if I kept working and didn't touch the investments for 20 years, I'd retire a millionaire. It was surreal. I'd gone from nearly losing everything to having more financial security than I'd ever dreamed possible. All because I'd stood up for myself and refused to let my family's betrayal define me. The Wells family became genuine friends. True to their note, they invited me to Emma's 8th birthday party, and I went. Their new house was lovely, filled with laughter and the chaos of children playing. Nathan and Carolyn treated me like family, insisting I come to Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings. "You saved us," Carolyn said one evening while we washed dishes together after dinner. "We were going to lose everything. Our savings, our home, our stability. The girls would have had to change schools. We'd have had to move back in with Nathan's parents. You gave us our life back. You would have done the same for someone else," I said. "Maybe," Carolyn admitted. "But not everyone would. Most people would have just taken their house back and left us to figure it out. You fought for us even though you didn't have to." Emma and Sophie, their daughters, started calling me Aunt Hilda. They'd run to hug me whenever I came over, showing me their school projects and asking me to push them on the swings. It filled a hole in my heart I hadn't realized was there. Frank's situation in prison was predictably miserable. Had been assigned to a medium security facility 2 hours away. I didn't visit. I didn't write. I didn't accept his collect calls. His attorney reached out once to ask if I'd write a letter supporting early parole. I declined. According to the few updates I got through the court system, Frank was bitter and isolated. Had been in several fights with other inmates and spent time in solitary confinement. He blamed me for everything, telling anyone who'd listen that his ungrateful daughter had destroyed his life. I felt nothing hearing that. No guilt, no sadness, no anger. Had made his choices. I'd made mine. Tyler's experience was different. Had completed his 1-year sentence and been released on probation. He was living in a halfway house and working at a warehouse making $16 an hour. He attended Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times a week and was genuinely working on his recovery. I knew this because Head started writing me letters again. Not asking for anything, just updating me on his progress. He was honest about how hard it was. The cravings to gamble. The temptation to slip back into old patterns. The shame of facing what Head done. But he was trying. Really trying. His letters were different from the old Tyler. More humble. More self-aware. More accountable. After 6 months of letters, he asked if he could meet me for coffee. Just once. Just to talk. He promised he wouldn't ask for money or help, just wanted to see me in person and say what he needed to say. I almost said no, but something in his last letter made me hesitate. He wrote, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness or your time, but I'm asking anyway because that's part of recovery. Making amends, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when you might get rejected. I've spent my whole life avoiding discomfort, and look where it got me. I need to do this, even if you say no." So I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Public, neutral territory. Tyler arrived exactly on time, looking different than I remembered. Had lost weight in a healthy way. His skin was clear. His eyes were focused. He wore work clothes, jeans, and a warehouse company polo shirt, and he carried himself with a humility I'd never seen before. We ordered coffee and sat at a corner table. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "Thank you for meeting me," Tyler finally said. "I know you didn't have to." "Why did you want to?" I asked directly. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," he said immediately. "I mean that. I don't want money or help or a place to stay or anything. I just wanted to apologize to you face to face. For everything. For stealing your house. For enabling Dad. For being a selfish, entitled mess for most of my life. For not appreciating what you did for our family while I did nothing." I studied him carefully, looking for signs of manipulation or deception. I didn't see any. "I'm in therapy," Tyler continued. "Real therapy, not just GA meetings. And I'm learning that Dad messed us both up, just in different ways. He put me on a pedestal so I never learned to handle failure or take responsibility. He ignored you so you had to be perfect and self-sufficient. Neither of those things were fair." "No, they weren't," I agreed quietly. "I'm not making excuses," Tyler said quickly. "What I did was wrong, and there's no justification for it. I'm just trying to understand why I became the person who could do something so horrible to his own sister." "Are you still gambling?" I asked. "No. 214 days clean," Tyler said. "I track every day. It's the longest I've been without gambling since I was 15 years old. And it's hard. God, it's so hard. But I'm doing it because I finally understand what I've lost. Not just money or things, but relationships. Trust. Self-respect. You." My throat tightened. "You can't just apologize and expect everything to be fine." "I know," Tyler said. "I'm not expecting that. I'm not expecting anything. I just needed you to know that I see what I did. I understand the damage. And I'm sorry. Truly deeply sorry in a way I've never been sorry for anything in my life." We sat in silence for a while, sipping our coffee. Finally, I said, "I need time. Years, probably. Maybe never. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." "That's fair," Tyler said. "More than fair, actually. I'll be paying restitution for the rest of my life. $50 a month doesn't even make a dent. but it's what I can afford. I want you to know I'm paying it, every month, on time. It's the least I can do. What about the loan sharks? I asked. Are you safe? I'm in a payment plan with them too, Tyler said. My probation officer helped negotiate it, $75 a month. It'll take decades, but they've agreed not to hurt me as long as I keep paying. It's manageable on my warehouse salary, barely. But I'm making it work. I thought about that. Tyler was making $16 an hour, probably bringing home about $2,000 a month after taxes. Paying $125 of that to restitution and loan sharks, plus rent at the halfway house, food, transportation. He was living on almost nothing, working a hard physical job, going to therapy and meetings, paying his debts. It was more than he'd ever done before. I'm glad you're getting help, I said finally, and I hope you stick with it. But I can't be part of your recovery right now. Maybe someday, but not yet. Tyler nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I understand. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for not hating me completely. I don't hate you, I said honestly. I just don't know you anymore. He stood up, started to leave, then turned back. One more thing. Mom would be proud of you, of what you've become. How you handled all this. I know I never said it, but she always knew you'd be okay. She worried about me, about Dad. But she never worried about you because you were always strong. I see that now. I'm sorry it took me so long. He left before I could respond. I sat there for a long time, staring at my coffee cup, processing everything. Tyler was trying. Really trying. It didn't erase what he'd done. But it was something. More than Frank had ever offered. I didn't know if I'd ever forgive him completely, but for the first time, I could imagine a future where maybe, eventually, we could have some kind of relationship. Not like before. Something different. Something built on honesty and accountability instead of enabling and dysfunction. It was a start. A full year passed since I'd stood on my porch and confronted Frank and Tyler. A year of rebuilding, healing, and discovering who I was outside of my toxic family dynamics. Frank had been in prison for 6 months of that year. He still refused to take responsibility, still blamed me for his incarceration. His parole hearing was scheduled for another year out, and based on his behavior reports, he wasn't likely to get early release. I'd written a statement to the parole board explaining how his actions had affected me and asking that he serve his full sentence. I felt no guilt about that. Tyler had been out of jail for 6 months. He'd moved from the halfway house into a small studio apartment. He was still working at the warehouse and had recently been promoted to a team lead position, making $19 an hour. He was still attending GA meetings and therapy. He was still paying his restitution and loan shark debts faithfully every month. We'd met for coffee 2 more times over those 6 months. Brief, careful conversations where we slowly began to rebuild something. Not the brother-sister relationship we'd never really had, but maybe a cautious friendship. It was fragile, tentative, and might not survive. But it was more honest than anything we'd ever had before. I was thriving. My job at Fairfax County was going wonderfully. I'd received a promotion and a raise to $76,000 a year. My investments were growing steadily. My house was exactly the sanctuary I'd always wanted it to be. Maria had become one of my closest friends, and Jake and Deshawn visited regularly for dinners and game nights. The Wells family was doing great too. Nathan had gotten a promotion at his engineering firm. Carolyn had started her own freelance graphic design business. Emma and Sophie were thriving in school and constantly begged me to come to their soccer games and school plays. I went to every one I could. Roger Anderson had become an unexpected mentor and friend. He checked in regularly, gave me advice on everything from investments to career decisions, and told me I reminded him of his daughter who'd passed away from cancer years ago. It was a bittersweet connection, but it meant everything to both of us. One Saturday afternoon, I was in my backyard planting flowers when a delivery truck pulled up. The driver handed me a small package with no return address. Inside was a jewelry box, and inside that was my mother's wedding ring. I gasped. Frank had sold it years ago, along with most of Mom's jewelry. I'd mourned its loss, but never thought I'd see it again. There was a note in Tyler's handwriting. I tracked this down at a pawn shop in Richmond. It took me 3 months of searching and 3 paychecks to buy it back. But it belongs with you. Mom would want you to have it. I'm sorry it took me this long to realize what matters. I'm trying to be better. I hope someday you can see that. Tyler. I sat down hard on my porch steps, holding the ring and crying, not tears of sadness, but of complicated, messy, hopeful grief. Tyler was trying. He was really trying. And while it didn't erase what had done, it mattered. I put the ring on a chain around my neck, next to my dog tags. My mother's love and my service, the two things that had shaped me most. I touched them both and felt centered, grounded, whole. That evening, I invited Maria, Jake, and Deshawn over for dinner. We grilled burgers in the backyard, drank beer, and laughed until our sides hurt. The Wells family stopped by with their girls, and we all ate ice cream and played cornhole as the sun set. This was my family now. Not the one I was born into, but the one I'd chosen. People who valued kindness, integrity, and showing up for each other. People who celebrated my successes and supported me through struggles. People who saw me for who I really was and loved me anyway. As I sat on my porch that night, watching everyone talk and laugh, I thought about everything I'd been through. The betrayal, the legal battles, the heartbreak of realizing my father and brother had valued money more than me. It had been the hardest thing I'd ever faced. Harder than any military deployment or training. But I'd survived it. More than survived. I'd triumphed. I'd stood up for myself when it would have been easier to stay silent. I'd fought for justice even when it meant sending my own family to jail. I'd protected innocent people like the Wells family when I could have just protected myself. And in doing so, I'd built a life I was proud of. I learned that love and family aren't about blood or obligation. They're about respect, integrity, and showing up for each other. My father and brother betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I could have let that destroy me. I could have stayed silent to keep the peace. But I chose myself. I chose my dignity. I chose justice. And you know what? The people who truly mattered stuck around. The ones who didn't were never really there anyway. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish or cruel. It makes you strong. It teaches people how to treat you. And sometimes, just sometimes, it gives someone like Tyler the wake-up call they desperately needed. I don't know if my brother will stay sober or if he'll relapse. I don't know if my father will ever apologize or take responsibility. But I know this. I'm not responsible for fixing them. I'm only responsible for protecting myself and building the life I deserve. If someone betrays your trust, even someone you love, you don't owe them forgiveness at the expense of your own well-being. You owe yourself justice. You owe yourself peace, and you owe yourself the chance to build something beautiful from the ashes they left behind. That's exactly what I did. And looking around at my life now, at this house full of laughter and love, at the financial security I've built, at the career I'm proud of, at the chosen family surrounding me, I wouldn't change a thing about how I fought back. My mother's ring hangs around my neck, a reminder that love is about sacrifice and protection, not enabling and destruction. She protected me by setting up that trust fund. She gave me the tools to survive even when she couldn't be here to help me use them. I'm home, truly home. In a house I own free and clear, surrounded by people who value me, doing work I love, with a future that's bright and stable. Nobody can take that away from me ever again, because I learned the most important lesson of all. You have to be willing to fight for yourself, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when the people you're fighting against are the ones who should have been protecting you all along. I fought, I won, and I built something better from the ruins they left behind. That's my story, that's my truth. And I'm proud of every choice I made along the way. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who betrayed you? How did you find the strength to choose yourself over keeping the peace? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else who's facing a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and realize they're not alone in dealing with family betrayal and injustice. Subscribe to hear more real-life stories about overcoming adversity and fighting back against those who try to take advantage of us. And please share this with anyone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for yourself, even against family. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it gave you the courage to protect yourself and build the life you deserve. Remember, you're stronger than you think, and you deserve people in your life who treat you with respect and love. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.